So we gathered here, like Association of Fine Artists of Serbia organized this event gathering, 3 days gathering, and actually this is like the third day of these sessions, which is open. And yesterday and before yesterday, we had more close working sessions with our guests. Some of them are here in Belgrade with us physically, and others joined us online. So the first day, let's say I will just shortly introduce what we did the last 2 days. The first day working session was gathered the Regional Association of Associations of Artists, and with the topic of independent status of independent artists. So as this is more of like a regional topic, as we shared similar kind of status that we inherited from the Yugoslav socialist period, let's say, and we wanted to see how did they change in these last decades of transition, and what are the perspectives for improving improving it as it got somehow deteriorated. The second day was done in international context, and the main topic was the payment of the artist. As these days, this is becoming, and from pandemics especially, it became like the hottest topic, as the artists are seen as very badly paid, like day. Okay, and so this evening we are here with the people who are actually in Belgrade, also on via Zoom is Milica Ilić, and that will explain us a little bit about also doing this with the Reshape project in a kind of collaboration. And so this was a 2.5 years a project that gathered lots of international organizations in order to try to make a proposal. Milica will explain more about this, so I will not go into detail, but to give some proposals with also in with lots of other artists from all around, like the Europe and surroundings. Proposal that might be presented to the European decision makers in order to improve the situation in culture. Also, Dirk van der Wiet, yes, from Flanders Art Institute, and here with us is, I'll say, in the order of appearance, Dan Clement is from Association of Artists of Užice. It's a very young association. It exists only 2 years, but it's very, how to say, progressive. They did lots of things. And 5 years, sorry. Jory Schreppers, okay, from State of the Arts, SOTA, from Belgium, and Aznik. Katja is, let's say, like presenting the situation. She's from Slovenia, but Buffalo in US, and she wrote lots of text to payment of the wages for artists, and very, maybe, let's say, militantly defending this cause. And she also collaborated at some stage with the Wage Collective in or movement in US. So she will explain a little bit about this. Ana Kutlesha from organization Za Kruh and Blok from Zagreb. Julia Racco from PAAC, Plataforma Asamblearia de Artistas de Catalonia, from Spain. And let's see, our also Miodrag Vargic, member of a group of working group of fair practices. Of course, Isidora Ilić, who actually moderated the first day of working session, and also she is coordinator of a working group of ULUS for status of independent artists. And Vasilena is also here, Vasilena Gankovska from the IG Bildende Kunst from Austria. Okay, so let's maybe start with the presentations. Today, actually, we wanted to talk a little bit how, just to make it a little bit short, what we are going to. From, let's say, January last year with the Association of Fine Artists of Serbia, we engaged in this like struggle for better conditions of artists and initiated lots of things and started these activities on lots of different levels, and especially like a pandemic situation also pushed us in this direction. But also we have to say at the end of the day, we like realized, we made surveys, we made communications, we made proposals to the ministries of culture. We organized plenty of debates on these different topics related to the situation of conditions of work in arts. But in the end of the day, like, okay, we realized that there is lots of artists who are deeply with a huge discontent of like their situation. But at the end, like there is really not many people who are implicating in these struggles. And it's maybe some experience that a lot of organizations also face, that when it's a matter of like going to a protest or to complain or so on, that we can't, as artists, we can't organize massively, how to say. So also there is this work of Goran Đorđević, still in beginning of 80s, who tried to organize international art strike, and who got lots of replies also about saying why it's not possible to organize an international art strike and why the artists are so different as workers, differ from the workers from other disciplines and so on. But this would be like just a little introduction to what we want to discuss here this evening. So we would like to invite all our guests to, if they could tell us something from their perspective, how is it to organize these struggles for the better conditions in, of work in arts.
I would just also say that Igor Rakčević from Association of Arts of Montenegro and Sanela Nuhanović from Collegium Artisticum Sarajevo is also here, and they can join the discussion as well. Maybe we can start with, I don't know, Anna, and presentation about their initiatives, Kruh, and what they did last year when the pandemic started, and how they supported artists in their struggle for better payment.
Mikrofon ne radi. Mikrofon ne radi sve vreme. Mikrofon ne radi, nego ja ne puštamo razglas. čuje. Moram malo da pazim.
Evo, vidiš. Da, okej.
Okay, change the plan. Let's start with the jury until solve this technical sharing of the screen. A tu je? A, ok, super.
Ne, sve u redu, Marija. Okay, I'm gonna start slow. The images are here just to illustrate what I'm gonna talk about. So, as Isidora said, I'm representing here initiative Za Kruh, which means for bread, but the word Kruh in Croatian is an acronym, and we use it as an acronym of the sentence, cultural workers stand up for wages. So that's, of course, the struggle for fair wages and better working conditions is at the core of our work. To explain a little bit the starting point of the initiative and the context in which we started to organize, I have to go back to 2019. When we organized a campaign and a public demonstration in front of the Croatian Ministry of Culture. So the cause of our campaign was cut in public funds for that year for open call for public needs in culture of the Republic of Croatia. Where we wanted to react in a way to intervene in the existing narrative, which existed like a critical narrative towards the Ministry of Culture, but it was mainly focused on the let's say ideology in a sense of a reaction towards a right-wing Minister of Culture that we had, and the fact that he was, of course, promoting and financing a lot of extreme right projects and organizations. But we wanted to stress out the fact that the new minister, Minister for Culture, which came in his place, although she had like this pro-European policy, she continued with public cuts and derogation of culture as a public good. And we wanted to put in the center of our debate question of working conditions in Croatia for the artists, which wasn't really a perspective that was back then present. So we initiated a Facebook campaign, I mean, like online campaign, where we produced different visuals, where we connected some data on the working conditions of the artists and cultural workers with visual materials. So you can just go further. And we also asked a lot of designers, artists from different sectors and disciplines to send us their contributions. So this was the name of the campaign, Dosta Rezova, enough with the cuts. And then we organized, you can go further. And we had like an agenda of five, you can stop here for a while, 5 demands that we sort of asked for from the ministry. And it was very important for us to not to narrow down our demands on the results of this open call, and not to ask only for more transparent distribution of the fund, of these funds, but to ask for a general change in a cultural policy, in a way to ask for a bigger budget for culture, for decent working conditions, for decent decentralized culture that would be accessible to a broader audience. And basically a new cultural policy that would promote culture as public good and decent working conditions. Of course, we knew that our demands won't be matched and somehow taken into account, but it was very important for us to broaden this struggle and to say that it's not enough just to ask for very specific, more transparent procedures and this kind of small, more bureaucratic demands. And also to address this question of working conditions beyond only artistic work, but to also say that our work in the art field is done by producers, managers, accountants, cleaning staff, technicians, and like the whole army of people who work in very bad conditions to make the art field going. So we ended up, you can go further, we ended up with a protest in February 2019, which was for us very important because we wanted to test how much people can we get to go out on the street and to really stand up for their rights, because like before that in years, this is a slogan saying united we beg, divided we beg, united we bargain, which is also very important for us to have this typical union worker struggle slogan held by artists in front of the Ministry of Culture. It was really something new in the public sphere, especially mainly for the artists and cultural workers themselves, like to articulate things in this perspective. So after the demonstration, which really showed us that there is like a mass interested in thinking in this direction and fighting for better working conditions, and that this is really something that people do feel as a problem. We decided to form this initiative in order to work more continuously on a long-term basis and to see what are the perspectives for further sustainable organizing in the field and somehow how to achieve that certain demands are fulfilled. So we started as a working group of several people. It's basically more or less informal initiative with some organizations, some individuals, artists, cultural workers from different sectors. And that's also very important for us, not to stay in the sector of visual arts. And we can go further. We started this web page and Facebook page, and basically this is the list of this was like our not to say manifesto, but like a public demand when the COVID crisis started, when we criticized the situation, and when we asked publicly like stuff like if the programs are canceled, they should still be paid to artists and workers and so on. We asked for the Ministry of Culture to introduce minimum wage for all the artists and cultural workers, to be flexible with reports, to accept like all possible answers that we might have to adjust our programs to new circumstances and so on, and to basically try to maintain as much as possible salaries and income to the cultural sector. You can go further. We also did like campaigns where we did interviews with cultural workers and then published their like sentences which show in which conditions these people live. We also made like a short video with different people from cultural sector in their homes to show all these faces behind the cultural production. You can go further. We also made some leaflets that we distributed around, and you can just list further. This was an action on a museum opening. We also did this like funny memes, commenting for Facebook, commenting. This is like a shady cultural future. I went to unpaid holiday, commenting like the multitasking we expected, especially from female artists which stay at home with their families during COVID crisis. The fact that our cultural policy, this is like a graph showing the flux of our cultural politics financing in different financial flow in different areas, because you can stop here, yeah. Because also what we do is we do analysis of different funders in Croatia, so Croatian Minister for Culture, local funders, and so on, just to show how things are getting worse, and which are all these mechanisms that they use to worsen like the opportunities for work and working conditions. You can go further. Just list. This is the end. Okay. So yeah, I think it's also my time to finish. So right now we are working on a fair pay protocol. We are in contact with several other also people and organizations, and we want to make price lists for every artistic field. We are in contact already with some people from performance arts and drama arts that are already very far off in this process of making a price list. But we also want to make a protocol, which is like a document which is now in its final phase, final draft, that would deal not only with the numbers, but also with the conditions of work, and the importance of asking protection through a contract, and several other mechanisms that could be used to make working conditions. And of course, at the moment we are thinking, and also here with other people, what are the best strategies to implement this protocol and this price list to become really a practice, not just something on paper. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Anna. I would just like to ask maybe Milica Ilić if she's there, if she would like to present something about Reshape project.
Dobro večer. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I am here. Vahida, I hope you hear me. It's very strange talking from my bedroom to an audience in Belgrade. So also, I first wanted to start off by saying thank you for inviting me here, and thank you for this opportunity also to collaborate on this event. I'm really humbled by what I'm hearing, what I've been hearing yesterday, and what I'm hearing today. And I hope that Reshape will be as interesting as some of the examples that we talked about, that you guys talked about in these last days. So, well, maybe I'll just go for it. So Reshape, well, maybe I'll just say why I am here. So I work in an organization that is called ONDA. It's the French Office for Contemporary Performing Arts Circulation. But I am actually there coordinating this project that is called Reshape, and that ONDA is the project leader of in the framework of a Creative Europe project or Creative Europe funded project. I will not be sharing my screen because I don't know. I just feel that it's, I don't know, perhaps. Better not to invade your screen with the Reshape logos or pictures. So Reshape is an experimental and a bottom-up project that is looking at rethinking and reinventing organizational models for the art sector. It was actually initiated by a group of intermediary structures, so organizations that are based all over Europe and Southern Mediterranean, importantly, and I'll go back to So organizations that actually share a mission of supporting the art sectors in their own environments or in their countries and in their regions. And that by doing that have a kind of a global overview of the sectors that they serve. It started really from an analysis that somehow sees our sector deeply immersed in practices and ways of working that are not any longer sustainable. So I mean, I'm not going to extend much on that. You all know the story. Our societies, the economic, the political, the social context, the ecological context that we act in has evolved tremendously. The artistic practices have evolved tremendously, and yet we are entrenched in ways of working that are highly extractive and discriminatory. So there is a need to reinvent, to reimagine our ways of working and the tools and instruments that we give ourselves to do this. So the question that the organizations that came together around this project or to launch this project chose to ask is how we as a sector can secure our own survival and our thriving, hopefully, by being more in tune with society and with the artistic practices. So the premise of Reshape from the onset was that this conversation, that this question can only be discussed and answered and led by actors from the ground. So those who are already experimenting with alternative models. Or to put it more simply, that this change will not be initiated from a perceived or self-perceived center and will not be initiated from an institutional context, but will be coming from the actors that are perceived to be coming more from the margins, from the independent scene and from the different independent sectors. So from the onset, Reshape wanted to somehow take a perspective that goes across the diversity of structures. And also geography is very important here. I mentioned that the organizations that initiated Reshape were coming from Europe and Southern Mediterranean. The whole Reshape community is kind of covering the diversity of these territories. Geography was important from the beginning because we felt that the problems that the sector needs to address today are global problems and that they require global solutions. And yet we have institutions and sectors that are, again, entrenched in nation-state logics. We are incredibly interdependent and interconnected, and somehow we are not able to reimagine tools that would help us answer those global problems in an interconnected and interdependent way. So that was another important topic for Reshape to kind of sustain that diversity of practices and of contexts, knowing, of course, that as long as we look at that broader geography, so continental Europe or rather geographic Europe and Southern Mediterranean, we are also looking at an extreme diversity of contexts, political, economic, social contexts. So Reshape is actually what it is. It's an experimental process in which artists and activists from Europe, from geographic Europe and Southern Mediterranean come together and work as researchers, as innovation experts, if you will, to propose joint radical solutions for the challenges of the sector. So Reshape proposed for them a framework which was made concrete through a series of online and on-site meetings and a lot of work, a lot of collaborative work around 5 topics, which were proposed as major challenges to the sector today. And these topics were art and citizenship, fair governance, the value of art, solidarity and how it can infuse economy, and transnational and post-national artistic practices. So they were provided a research framework, but the work was pretty much done on the basis of carte blanche. So the participating activists, artists, art workers could choose to focus on a particular topic, to develop a particular strand, to concentrate on certain ideas and to give the format to that ideas that they wanted. They had roughly a year and a half or 2 years to work on this research. And after this process, ideas were then presented, discussed, tested, and finally proposed to the broader sector, to artists, to arts organizations, and importantly to institutions and to policymakers, hopefully policymakers and funders.
Milica,
yeah.
We would have to like go closing a little bit because we have lots of people that have to present still. And if you just want to wrap up a little bit, or
yeah, maybe I can just tell you that the results of this research are now there, that they are hugely diverse. They are poetic, they are playful, they are ambitious. Some of them are very practical, some of them are more reflective. All of them can be found on the website of Reshape, which I can put the link in the chat. And also we are now about to publish a book, which will come out in a few weeks. And that will be also available for distribution if you're interested, with a lot of interesting material for you to dig into. And I just hope that you can kind of, you know, dig through these ideas and perhaps, yeah, take them, use them, adapt them, adopt them. I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Milica, very much. Also, it was to know that there is a broader network of cultural and art institutions that maybe could also be like some kind of support, like a support network for bringing or pushing some ideas, or I don't know. And okay, so now also I would like to ask Dirk, who is also online, if he would like to say something at some moment or present something, just to send a message, but we will continue now with the presentation of that are here. So Juliana from PAC will present a little bit about the activities of Association of Artists of Catalonia.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so yesterday I mentioned just a little bit about the PAC, and I mentioned that the PAC, it's from about 2016, so we've been around for 5 years, but actually we have a longer history. The history comes from the Visual Artists of Catalonia, which was another organization which I think in its heyday had about 2,000 members. It was very active and developed many things, even a residency program, which is Hangar in Barcelona, which is the city's official residency program. Then there were problems with the Visual Artists of Catalonia, which expired in about 2015. The PAC came about in 2016 because there was a void. There was a lack of an artist association. But basically, PAC had to move from a lot of disappointment, let's say, and a lot of a difficult situation. We had to build, well, the people who were in the original PAC had to build a completely new image and start a whole new association, because there was actually a successful organization that ended up having difficulties. I came on board the PAC 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And one of the things that we decided was that it was very, very important to communicate with the artists, to kind of rebuild the trust and make the community of artists in Catalonia aware that there was a new organization, that the intention of the organization was in the interests of the artists. And basically we put a lot of effort onto communications, okay? So that's why I'm showing you the webpage, because this, for us, communication became a very important tool for us to communicate what we were doing politically and in general. So one of the things that we also did, for example, is we asked an artist, Francesc Ruiz, to develop the logo. So we changed the image, like the logo, the web page, etc. And these are also ways to provide jobs for artists. No, like one of the ideas is that trying to create job opportunities for artists through the association itself. So basically, it's very well. It's in Catalan, but for example, here on the first part, it's what is the PAC, you know, so where we come from, the first one, which explains the history that I was telling about. Comtes Claros means transparency, the networks that we're involved with, and also the statutes, which is the status of the artist, and other statutes that we were talking about yesterday. Then it talks about who we are. What we decided to do is now the association counts about 250 members. Visualize who our members were. So this page basically is like a biography of all of the members. Okay, so it's also a platform for the members to be present on. Here, this is we have a page that says what we do. And I think I mentioned yesterday that we have formation for artists, these really explaining to artists how to approach selling. And we offer courses, and also we offer legal consultancy for contracts, etc., for the artists. This is in terms of services. And one of the things that the PAC is very strong about is that even though we do offer services to our members, we're not a service-oriented association. What's important for the PAC, most of all, is for artists to understand that we have to stand together as a community. And without a community, I think what Anna was saying was, together, alone we beg, together we bargain. Our main job has been trying to explain to artists that yes, the PAC exists, yes, it does provide services, but it's beyond about joining an association and paying a membership to get services. It's about being together and being in solidarity with other artists. So we have a lot of political action, where we, as I said yesterday, we dialogue both, well, we dialogue at a national level, but mainly at a regional and at a city level, and we also provide juridical and fiscal advice, because it was fundamental. We are all voluntary members. There's 8 people on board. We're all voluntary, but there are 2 paid positions. One paid position is for the coordination, and the other paid position is we decided to hire a communications person. This became fundamental because how do we regain trust within the artist community? How do we express the transparency that we're operating with at this level? The way that we did this was through Twitter, through Instagram, and through the web, and just really communicating everything we were doing, letting people know that whether they were members or not members, we were fighting for artists' rights, and publishing and making everything available to the public. We also did other things. So the association, this is how you can associate yourselves, but we also did other things. For example, we developed this thing called prototypes, which basically during COVID, well, when COVID started, we went into the museums and we basically started to talk. So you have MACPA here, which is the museum, well, the main museum of Catalonia, the CCCB, the MNAC is another one. We started to develop projects, residency projects with the museums, which, like all of our activities, they're for members, but you don't have to be a member. Okay, one of our main rules is that you don't have to be a member of the PAC to access most of what we're offering, because we want people to join not because of the services that we offer. We want them to join because they believe that it's a good thing to be in solidarity. There is a fee to join, it's 70 euros per year, but we put it at you pay because you believe in it. We also, during COVID, offered free membership for the whole year last year. And we also have we have like reduced fees, like 10 euros for students, for example. These are ways to get members. But as I said, everything that we offer, even the residencies, every single thing that we offer is for non-members as well. because you're a member because you want to. Kind of like the idea that we have is that we do offer services because services are needed, information is needed, and we need to fight on a political level. But it's about artists coming together. Another thing that we did, for example, during COVID, and it continues today, is we opened this Solidarity Fund, which we have anonymous donors. So when artists were unable to, or are unable to still now, pay for things, they can approach us, explain their situation. We don't ask for any proof, okay? We trust the artist is coming to us and saying, I need this much money for food, I need this much money to pay for rent. They don't have to be a member of the association to benefit from this, okay? So as I was saying, this is ways to, our intention is to protect and to fight for the rights of all artists. We believe that by fighting in a line that's very transparent, very clear, and without interest, that this is the way that we can get the community to grow. And the best way is through communications and letting people know what we're doing, because a lot of the time, just information is not getting out to people. So another way that we decided, a communication strategy that we have is we have a residency for an artist in our networks. So it's a paid residency for an artist to spend 3 months at a time using our communications, like mainly the Instagram, but it can be anything else, as a free platform for his or her artistic expression. And this has worked amazingly. This is using the communications also as an art form. And there's other things that we fight for. For example, here it's the Renda Básica Universal, which is the basic income for everyone. And I could go on, but we analyze all open calls. Whenever a museum is up for new directorship, we're involved in analyzing all the open calls for the good practices. Okay, so if a museum or a public center is hiring a director, we're in and we're analyzing, and our voice is counted as an important voice for saying whether the conditions are good conditions to have people who are directing the museums and the public institutions. And we're also analyzing open calls and publicly saying when a call is incorrect through our communications. We say, for example, this call has this kind of problem. First, we dialogue with the institution. Obviously, we don't go kamikaze. We dialogue and we say what we think has to be changed. And if there's an impasse and there's something that's impossible and that we feel is wrong, then we publish the information, okay? So basically, that's what the PAC has been doing. Our main aim is, yes, services, but solidarity of art among artists above everything else.
Thank you. Maybe we can hear about the Belgian state of arts and the context and how they support their artists. Jury is with us.
Thank you. Yeah, so maybe to start with, we're not an association with paid membership. Our mission says that we are an open platform that wants to rethink or reshape the structure today, and we do that via a diverse scale of action, and we do that in solidarity with a lot of other institutions or a lot of other associations that join that fight with us. We wanted to start with a small video which I brought that shows how the past year was for State of the Arts.
C'est une belle journée pour sauver le monde. C'est une belle journée pour se réveiller. C'est une belle journée pour prendre les ondes. C'est une belle journée pour la vérité. C'est une belle journée. It's a beautiful day to save the world. It's a beautiful day to change the game. It's a beautiful day to take it on. It's a beautiful day to go out and play. It's a beautiful day. Les riches sont les plus mécontents. Il y a du changement dans l'air, faut pas le nier. Il est temps de rafraîchir ce vieux continent et de réaliser le futur de notre passé. Let's take care of our own and do our thing. Time to raise our voice and sing. Time to open up, feel free. Don't blame it on the good times, blame it on the lobby.
All right, so yesterday we talked about the almanac, which I brought here, and you can also view online. And right after that came out, the news came out that the Minister of Culture was going to heavily cut back on culture, and the main cutback was planned for the so-called project subsidies, which are really important, mainly for individual artists. So he cut exactly in the heart of where culture is made. And so after the almanac, which was about fair arts, fair pay, and so on, State of the Arts all of a sudden was also a really activist platform. And as you saw in the video, we organized protests against that. And what I think is really cool in the video, I don't know if it was in English also or only in Dutch, is you can really see how SOTA thinks by on the day we had a protest in front of the parliament. There was also a heavily fire in an asylum center. So there was a discussion: we shouldn't go to the parliament. We should do something about the fire in the asylum center. And we did both. So there was a group protesting in front of the parliament, and there was this group going to be solidary with the people who were suffering from the fire. And I think that's really important to stretch out, that everything SOTA does is in solidarity with other groups. We don't only care about the arts, we also are concerned about other changes in society, such as the way migrants are treated in Belgium, such as how teachers are suffering the same issues that artists are suffering, and so on and so on. So I think that's really what's our strength, and it's not how do you say it? For us, it's logic, because we have a certain vision about how we see the world, and we find it really important that that vision is spread out, not only within the art world, but as broad as possible. Let's see, and then in the video you also saw the next challenge. While the cutbacks of 60% were still let's so to say unsolved, Corona came, and the next challenge started, because it took at the end 100 days before there was a measurements or a plan how to support artists, even though their complete income was faded away. So what we did there is not only try to involve policymakers or try to come up with a plan how to support them, but also take measures in own hand. And we started an online tool which is called SOS Relief, which is a solidarity tool that couples people who need money to people who, so to say, have money, and it's really cool. Since 2020, since May 2020, more than 200,000 euros is how do you say it, redirected in that way, or given a good cause, and that's also solidarity for us, that people in the arts world who have stable contracts realize that the art that they are programming comes from people who are not enjoying stable contracts. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that we act on things that we find important, not only within the arts, and that we do it double-sided. We try to step directly to the policymakers, but we also try to come up with our own plan and also with an alternative. It doesn't stop with a protest outside the parliament. We were also inside the parliament trying to talk to policymakers directly and give them a new plan. Like, here, this is how we think it should have been done. And I think in some ways it works, because the 60%, for instance, is turned over from a cutback into an extra investment. So I think that taking measures in your own hands can really help. And maybe one last thing, I don't know if Dirk is watching. Do you know if Dirk is there? Because another important thing, I don't know if he is going to talk about it as well. Another last important thing, I wasn't being able to talk about it yesterday, but I think it's important to talk about quickly, is that there's also a tool that State of the Arts didn't develop. It's called Juist is Juist, translated Right is Right. And it gives a complete overview of how fair payment, fair practice in the arts work. There's model contracts for everything. You can find it all there. And that was just something I wanted to mention, because I wasn't being able to yesterday. And I think that in a nutshell, that's how State of the Art works. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. Can we connect Dirk, maybe, if he would like to add something in this context? Dirk David from Flanders Arts Institute. Okay, Dirk says later. We can continue.
Yeah, maybe Katja, yeah, since solidarity with other working groups is something that we could heard in last 2 days. Maybe you can tell us about the USA context and the wage and how they were struggling for and supporting the artists.
Okay, so I will speak about wage as a researcher, not as a wage member. One of the reasons why I got interested in their work was because I used to work, before I went to the States and work in academia, I used to work for an association of arts, independent artists and small arts and cultural NGOs in Slovenia and Ljubljana. I was also struggling because there was the question of artists not being paid, and the question of why are artists not being treated, or why don't they treat their work as labor, and why do they think it's not work. And so when I came to the United States, I was really impressed and shocked, because I came from this socialist context where, you know, we used to be a part of the country of the working people and work was always very important and valued and blah, blah, blah. And then I came to the heart of to the center of the beast of capitalist exploitation. And there you go, there's wage working artist and in the greater economy is what wage means. And there they are talking about what they do as work. And not only do they talk about it as work, but they also demand fair payment. And so what I think is interesting about wage is that they've managed in the vacuum of state involvement. They created a group. They wrote a manifesto. They actually also developed a survey initially because they began in 2008, so that they are more than 10 years old. And they did a survey in order to establish that artists are not getting paid or that they're paid very little if they're paid. And then they developed with a group of different people, artists, scholars, and so on. They developed a system of fees. But what is very interesting in what they do is that these fees are based on the total operating budget of a particular organization. And what is also important to know is that in US, this data about what is a total operating budget of different NGOs is available because this kind of data gets collected, it's public, I mean, and so on. And so based on that, they calculated different types of fees. And if you go on their webpage, wageforwork.org, you can look this up and see how it works. And so based on that, they then decided that every organization can apply for wage certificate. So let's say an art NGO, if they decide that they will pay these minimum fees, they get wage certified. And so there's a whole system. It's very, you know, it's complicated, I assume, but they got it all digitized now, so it's not done by hand anymore, where they develop the fees with the organization, and the organization then gets this certificate, but this gets checked. So it's not just some bullshit certificate where you get it like, you know, fair trade, and we all know how fair trade works. It's a great certificate for the consumers to feel better, but the shit happens. And so here they do the same. They actually check if you pay, and then these things get checked annually, I believe. And so that was one important thing that they do, and they keep doing it. Of course, it's voluntary. They can't, it's not enforceable. So it's kind of like a, I believe also you can read it in the history and on the webpage that what they do is they want to create some kind of an ecology within the art system, because, and I think that that's very important in terms of what they're doing, because there's a lot of training in the art world, and there's a lot of you know, there's a lot of injustice and there's a lot of hierarchies, and I think that it is also important and to be that the art world itself has to have some element of self-reflection, and that, you know, it's, people, especially art workers, don't like to talk about money because there are numerous stigmas related to that. But it's really important that we do have a very clear and clear position about the economic side of what does living as an artist mean, and that this living as an artist and working as an art worker means you also need to get paid for what you do. And so I believe that so far they have about 97 or 92 organizations which have this certificate, and that's how it works. And then afterwards they also developed another system which is called Wagency. Wagency is another certificate and also a kind of service where Wage helps negotiate fair fees for an artist or an art worker. And if you by yourself manage to negotiate this certificate, that you've accomplished that, which I think is another important signal for other artists, because I think that in my view, at least, the art field is extremely paralyzed by this idea that what artists do and what art is not work. And I think that that's like, it's a really paralyzing mystification that works not only within the field, especially when people get trained. The academies don't really talk about that aspect. They don't talk about the economy. If they talk about the economy today, they talk from the neoliberal positions and ideology of talking about art as in entrepreneurial terms and market related terms. And so this idea that art is not work is not only present within the field itself, but it's also present in the public, because the public also thinks that artists are doing their work. Just today, we talked with some other organizations who are also NGOs. You know, they do very important political and social work, and they were like, well, you know, a lot of people really think that, you know, they do it for love. And before that, this morning I had an interview with the journalist, and we also talked about that. So I think it's also the public perception that art is not work is also goes hand in hand with the field itself. And I think that for me, Wage was such an interesting example. And I think also they're connected to a number of other initiatives in Europe and worldwide. And yesterday we could hear with the Italian group, I think also with the German group, they all referred to them as an important organization because the system is simple. And it's also not related to the state. Because in US, the state's role in terms of cultural policy and regulating labor in general, not just for art and culture, is really problematic. And so I think that that's an important tool and the way they got to self-organize. So maybe that's it. And the third thing that I wanted to say is because what I also thought was very important about Wage was that they are a political organization, and it's something that you also stressed about your organization. So it's a service, but it's also a conscious raising initiative. And very early on, when they started to do this, they got invited by a biennial. I told this story already to all of you yesterday, but I want to say it one more time. So the biennial invited Wage to be part of an exhibition. And they said, no, we can negotiate the fees for the exhibition, for all the artists that are exhibiting, but we are not going to put a poster or whatever else you think. It's not an artwork. I mean, an object. What we do is political work. So I think that that's also very important, because today a lot of people can talk about the exploitation of artists and so on and so on, and it remains on the level of content of the artwork while they are being exploited. So I think that that's another important aspect.
Thank you.
Art Workers Italia, is it working? No. Art Workers. No, this is not working. Yeah, use the same logo, no? Like this letters. Like this is not an artwork, but artwork, like separately. But and this is something where like a lot of artists, activist artists, fall on, like a kind of trap that they usually end up showing their activist work as an artwork, and then this is finished. Like it's really interesting.
Maybe we can call in Vasilena to discuss exactly what Katja was mentioning, how one does get paid for the work, since and how do you negotiate that price list, since the work is usually referred to the object, to the finished work, and artists, even when they advocate for the payment they don't calculate in the process that they invested as time and also material. So there was interesting notion about how this Austrian association, IG Bildende Kunst, was making this price list exactly referring to the quantification of the artwork. I don't know if Vasilena is with us online.
Yes, I'm still here.
Hi.
Hello. Hi. Yesterday I presented what we've been doing in terms of establishing a guideline for exhibition and other fees, plus a table with fees per hour related to different types of art-related jobs. And what you mentioned is actually very important, because by establishing the guideline, we also going to provide a FAQ sheet, which will be, I don't know how many pages, but it has to actually provide information about how we came to these categories, which will be in the guideline. Why do we think that exhibition fees should relate to the number of artists involved? Maybe I can explain shortly. The exhibition fees it will be paid to every artist participating in an exhibition or an art project, regardless if the work was new or old. If it is a new work, this means probably a commission. Then there must be an additional fee for the time spent on the working for the new work of the new preparation of the new work. So basically, in this, let's say, basic package, we have we calculate the time for communication. The first moment you get contacted by or invited by a curator or an institution or someone else. And we some kind of figured out that depending on how many people participate in a show, that also the amount of hours you spend working on this also varies. So of course, the most money you get if you have a solo show. But it is important to mention that also the way how long people spent on one project is also related to the experience. So we did not calculate the experience, but we know very well that, for example, well-established artists who have solo shows in big institutions and maybe work for 2 years on a show, they negotiate totally different artist fees. So basically, we also think that by providing a simple guideline, this will be kind of the first step and tool for empowerment and encouraging our colleagues to ask for a fee. Because as I mentioned yesterday, when we started working on this topic, not many institutions paid artist fees for participating in exhibitions, but now most of these institutions pay artist fees. We cannot figure out how much they pay, because the problem is that there is a transparency data bank for all the funding, but we don't have access to that. And we could actually have access to the annual reports of the cultural and art division of the Chancellery, or, for example, the city of Vienna, or, for example, the regional governments. But we don't know how much an institution thought it gets in total, because one institution might get support by 5 different public subsidy givers. So we decided to not demand a percentage of, to not work with this category, which was crucial for the wage calculator, for example. Basically, I have the numbers, but I don't think that it is important to mention them now, because I think that we will have, now we are in a process of a feedback round with other organizations and artists, art institutions, so that I hope we will hear something about that. But we oriented ourselves on variety of models. For example, the Berlin model, which is a very specific tool, which is related only to the Berlin state-owned galleries or city-owned galleries. So what is important in the exchange we had with fellow organizations was the methodological part of the situation. So how you negotiate the budgets. And we are now in a good position because the Austrian government, and especially the Division for Arts and Culture, is now working on a fair pay policy. So basically they called in all the advocacy groups and organizations related to art and culture in Austria to participate in this process. It is a forum open for around 10 to 12 organizations, and our organization takes part in. So, of course, now we are very much in a hurry to finalize these guidelines, because there will be a big survey about fair pay policy, and we want to be part of this with the paper. So, and also there will be a big fair pay gender gap, which is very interesting thing, because all of a sudden things we've been demanding for years now started to be very important for the state politicians. And I also have to mention that the cultural agenda is now in the hands of the Green Party. So we are now quite lucky in this sense, because they installed a lady who is very experienced. She used to work for the art and cultural division for many, many years. So she knows exactly what's going on in the art and cultural sector. And she used to be back then and now still in very intensive contact with advocacy groups and organizations like ours. So we are lucky on this point. But of course, we know that if something changes, if there is a shift in the government and there is something else going on, that this process might stop from one day to another. So I think that now everybody is really in a hurry to push this agenda, so that there are these parameters for fair pay, and we hope very much that also the funding, or the way how funding is being distributed, changes, so that institutions, not only big but also middle and small institutions, could allow themselves and afford to pay the artists. Because I can give you an example. What's going on now is, for example, there are a lot of artist-run spaces in Vienna. There are around 80 of them, and most of them pay symbolic, let's say, artist fees, but still they pay artist fees. And the thing is that they want to pay the artist fees, but the problem is that there is not so much money left for the people who run the spaces. So basically they work under very precarious conditions, and something called self-exploitation is very much on the run in this situation. And there must be something some tools, so that we don't need to self-exploit ourselves if we want to run also an exhibition space. Yeah. So the thing is that in this process, we are very much in contact with variety of people from the scene, because we started alone. We started with few people, but it was important for us and very much let's say, the whole situation around the governmental initiative, and also the connection to other advocacy groups and other genres, such as theater or cultural initiatives or literature, was also important for us to see how the other genres are doing it. So basically, some of them are more advanced but we are actually on a good run. So this time we could say that fine art sector is not so late, because I have to say another thing, and it's a phenomenon. Yeah, I'm finishing now.
Yeah, thank
you.
you.
Fine art sector has been always some kind of in the backstage. We know that theater people start and negotiate. They're very good in negotiation, but fine art sector was always some kind of being neglected, not so loud. So now things change, because we are on an equal basis with the other genres, and also because we did a lot of backstage work. So now we start making this work visible. And this is one thing which is very important for all the people sitting here tonight, that we all do a lot of invisible work. And I think that it is very important that we sometimes connect in such formats, so that we see that we are not alone in this process.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was the why we also wanted to end up the participants and colleagues with this public debate. So in a way to share the experience, but also invite people to join in, and after we present what we also learned in these 2 days. I think this is a good point to open the discussion to the public, and maybe get some reflections from the people in the room.
Maybe I have a question. I would just like to, it's like what I perceive, and I'm like also very surprised to find this similarity, that all these organizations are working, the work is voluntary actually, and we are all struggling for the payment of the artists. I mean, we like, of course, like we have to go apply for some projects, but we know like this, like we need some funds also, because we need to cover there is lots of costs for just making this thing. Or like, for example, in our association of artists, we even have employees that we inherited, so we have to work to pay them, like who are even like not skilled to do all this work that we need. So we somehow do double job. So it's like some kind of trap, like in order to be able to represent so many artists, like we entered this, but then we found ourselves like in some kind of trap, like also because this is so like structural, it's like so unflexible, or I don't know, like, so now I open more questions, but like, I don't know, like how is it, like how can we continue like doing this? And like I just heard from Juliana, for example, she worked for 2.5 years for the association, and she has to go because it's just this work is exhausting. You can't do it all your life. And we also feel like this, like after 1.5 years of working with the association, in the association, we feel completely exhausted. You can't do it on a long term, like, but how to make this, all this work sustainable, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I had a talk with Kobe about this right before I left here, because yeah, it's really recognizable. I think all of us know, have experience with that in some way or another. But I think because a lot of people that are involved in state of the arts already do it for like 5, 6, 7 years. So they found a way how to, I'm only there for a small year, so I can't talk about it yet. But I think what is important is that you have a system where you can pull on the brake if it's needed. So and give it on to somebody else. So I don't know, we called it an estafette, I think, and not a marathon. And you need to be able to give it on to somebody else. And I think that's really important, to surround yourself with people that can take over if needed, and also imply a system where you can be open when it's getting too much. Because the almanac I brought also has some pages devoted to burnouts, and I think this is an even bigger topic now. We're going to make a new one for 2022, and I think there's going to be more room for about that topic, because it's really out there when you're working in the arts. You want to say something? You want to add to that or not? I thought you were. So yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, sorry, that in relation to the PAC, the idea is that every 2 years there's a new board, right? Actually, one member has been on for about 4 years, and what's interesting is we also produce text. So we produce text material on related issues, and this person was involved with production and all kinds of work being done. And we decided that when it was time to renew the board, we decided to stay on. Half of us are staying on for longer because it's hard also to pass the baton, no? Because if you just after 2 years have a new board, you kind of have to start everything over again. So we found that we have to kind of do this thing where we replace people like one by one, no? And one of the things is, as I mentioned, we have 2 people that are paid, like you guys have staff, but we're trying to find a way to have at least the president and the vice president paid, because I can't explain the amount of work that has been put in, especially by the president, the vice president, the treasurer, and the secretary. And we do get funding from the Generalitat, the region, and from some other bodies, very little bit of funding, very small amount of funding, but we're trying to find a way, because there has to be some kind of, I mean, there's some positions that it's like almost, it's a full-time job. Yeah.
We would like to invite also the other people who are here, or if they would like to ask something completely different, or I don't know, like if there is some.
I have 2 suggestions in about 8 sentences or fewer. I think artists have to achieve a greater distinction from craftsmen and skilled people. Here in Belgrade, people refer to hairdressers as artists, skilled craftsmen as artists. I respect skilled work and I hire skilled artisans, but you should promote yourselves without invoking muses and without mystifying your work. Second, try to achieve a law which exists in many states in the United States and in some European countries, by which every new public building will have to include artworks. In some American states, 1/2 of 1%, and others a full 1% of the budget has to be spent on art. And art is chosen by a competent committee in which artists and others are represented.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know, but the question that Vahida posed is more like, I would say, structural regarding the association, but maybe one general would be how you actually engage all the artists and, let's say, cultural workers, but artists. I think are the subject of these conversations in order to fight for the for their rights and the better conditions of work, because situation here is that we can hear colleagues and other artists complaining, but to get doing something is another thing, or being involved. I don't think that it should be maybe done from the top, but also what would be the methods and methodologies for the inclusion and engagement of other in this struggle, because not only for the association, but few of us cannot do it. Anna was.
I just wanted to comment also briefly on your suggestion. I think it's interesting, but it should be broadened because this idea of 2% for art, or this percentage for art, which then goes to public artistic interventions in public buildings. I think that today we can think having all these formats and disciplines, which are non-material art, performance art, and different forms of artistic expression. We can, because why is it important? What comes to my mind is a socialist model. For example, in my hometown in Croatia, we had a public post office with a work, mosaic work by famous artist Edo Murtić, that everyone who could see who came in the post office. I think this is a beautiful model, although it wasn't called 2% for arts. And today, maybe we are somehow very detached from the idea that art can be something for broad masses, and that people from different backgrounds have the right to consume art and to be like able to see and to experience and to participate in contemporary art. And in a way, I think that this kind of struggle for better conditions for artistic production has to go hand in hand with a struggle for art that's widely accessible. And that's also a way of broadening our struggle and making alliances outside the art world. So I just wanted to say that.
It works, yeah. Because we were within this research project we did with the Association of Artists last year, so we explored a little bit all this socialist period and how art was placed within society, no? And the artists, and how there was a huge, and we found that there was a huge effort to integrate artists in a broader society and employ them. It was also like the way in intention to grant them, I mean, to provide their livings, no? And but it was going both ways. So, for example, in urbanism, in like arranging these public spaces, and in different kind of industries, industrial design, and so on. And even like now, even like with this art practices that are developing, let's say, last decades of community art, like we can see it's not only the product, and it shouldn't be the evaluated like a product, what artist is delivering. No, it's also like a rather process and work, actually. I mean, that we are coming back to, like, when we have to value the work of artists, it's not like, it shouldn't be like a product, but in the terms of a work that artist is delivering. And also it brings back to what Nana was saying, like how to demystify this work, because it's not just artists that are like making it mystifying and unable to be perceived as work, but it's like the whole system is made like this to every time more mystify the work. I mean, and I think it was possible, like also Katya wrote about this, how in this first 2 decades of socialist period, it was like artist was more understood. I mean, at least in Yugoslav society, not broader, like was understood as a worker who is also participating equally in society with their work, and its work is equally valued. But now this situation hugely changed, that like artist is not even considered by the like position, working status of artist is not regulated by the labor law. It's only defined by the law of culture, that doesn't mean so much. I mean, talking about Serbia, and then with the laws for social, how do you say, like social affair, no, security and so on. And recently, in our working group in Ulus, there was a group who developed very interesting model for the independent artists. Maybe, I don't know, Milan, if you would like to explain something about this, because
it's not an innovative model. It's something that exists in some Western countries, also in Yugoslavia. It's connected to local community, local, how to say, it's kind of municipality organization, but that lowest level of organization, and it is about employing artists in different activities of local community. Sorry, I'm tired. I was on work whole day, so my concentration is very low, and it's not only about employing artists, it's also about democratization of processes of deciding on art projects and what is relevant for the community. And there is it's about establishing and developing that both side dialogue between community and the artist, and kind of, but we are not sure because we didn't do some kind of research, but there were some kind of models similar to that existed in the socialist Yugoslavia. So that's it. Sorry? Mesne zajednice, yeah, community offices, okay.
Hi, I would like to ask you about communication with artists. That's interesting thing about 2000, isn't it? Artists in your organization. 200.
What I was saying is that oh, sorry.
No, tell us something about methodology, goals, and results of that communication.
Yeah. the historical association had about 2,000 members. We have about 250 members. About communication, one of the things we did, which I didn't mention, is that when COVID happened, we decided to once a week, every Wednesday from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, we had an open online session where all artists, anyone could communicate with us, and we would collect all like the artists' complaints or preoccupations or their situation. And we basically had like a weekly meeting, like a session, like where, you know, and this was something that came, I mean, one of the magical things out of COVID, you know, is that suddenly you realize that you actually have tools that you can communicate with people, especially when we're considering a situation. The situation in Catalonia is extremely Barcelona-centric, and there's a lot of alienation that's being felt by artists who are living in smaller communities, who feel that they're ignored or they don't have access to things. So actually, one of the things about communication was managing to have an interactive access with the artists where they could speak with us. They didn't have to come to Barcelona to join the meetings. They didn't have to come to Barcelona to be present. And they could also express the difficulties that they were having in their own smaller context, sorry. And also talk about bad practices that were happening in places that are actually ignored, no? So this communication, now we do it once a month, and we've changed the format. It's called the Consortia. We've changed the format. What we do now is that we invite someone, and for example, I was in charge of one that was about inclusivity, because my part within the PAC has a lot to do with inclusivity concerning gender, race, and different functions, different abilities. This is another thing, is that getting the message out that artist associations and that the arts has to be a completely inclusive environment. So these monthly meetings, basically now somebody is kind of invited. I, for example, was working with a person who is part of an organization called Migrantes Transgresores, based in Madrid, which is a transgender migrant artist collective, and discussing inclusivity issues, but sometimes it could be a curator or someone else. And any person who is a member or a non-member can participate in these monthly sessions online. Yeah, it's completely open. Yeah.
For Anna. Anna, I would like to ask you about protests. It was very interesting on photos, and tell us something about how you prepare and what in recall of people, how many people was there?
I think it was around 500 people, something like that, yeah. It was really prepared in a period of 1 month. Yeah, and it was initiated by my collective in which I'm a part of, called Block, but we called other people to join us in the organization, and that were artists, people from other nonprofit associations, but also from institutions. So I have to stress out that we really wanted to build alliances with workers, I mean, people that are individuals, not to insist on like having an alliance of non-profit organizations or whatever, but to reach out to people who are art workers and who maybe in their own collectives also feel exploited and that their voice is not heard. Basically we had like 1 month of discussions about our demands. We wrote them together. We went out to the media. We also had this Facebook campaign and Instagram campaign that I was showing, where we called for people who have visual skills. They didn't have to be like artists with academia diploma to apply this slogan, "Enough with the cuts," on some kind of a visual material. And that was also very empowering. Because I think it was the first time that we reached out to these people to support in this way. Although they are maybe not in a way directly hit by this cut, because this is like an open call for public needs in culture, where associations in NGOs in culture apply. But of course, in the second run, you know, the people who get cut off are also all these associates, designers, artists, etc. So yeah, we also had nice media coverage, I have to say, because it was somehow it was a first protest after several years in front of the Ministry of Culture. The only protest before that was the media sector, and so it kind of it was like heard in the broader public because. It was a bit like a rare thing that artists and cultural workers raised their voice.
Yeah, but it's really interesting that a lot of these initiatives, let's say, are gathering different kind of artists and art workers. So there is...
And also as Jory was saying, also teachers and other people that are affected. This is really important too.
Also technicians, or people who are taking part in the, yeah. It's also because we did together with the independent cultural scene and other organizations, we also initiated this solidarity fund in the midst of the pandemic. And it was a solidarity fund for cultural workers, and also so including all the workers that didn't have all the artists, art workers that didn't have like this status or were not employed because they were covered by the government measures, but there was this gray zone, let's say, like of all the artists who were not entitled, didn't have any legal contract, or I don't know, like relation. And also we, like, for example, insisted that there is also all this kind of like technicians, I don't know, like the models in art schools, or yeah, because it was because only then we could see, like we could make note of all this range of precarious occupations that existed, that actually didn't. Yeah. And it's also nice, you know, sorry.
No, I'm actually very, Ivan, your name is Ivan, sorry. Milan, sorry, Milan. I'm interested actually about what you were saying about this kind of these kind of contracts for placing artists in different places. This is what I understand, like placing artists kind of. The project that we did with the museums actually was not a residency in the general or what we normally consider a residency. It was more based on putting artists inside the museums, and basically, for example, with the MNAC, which is the National Museum of Catalonia, the idea is that the artist participates in all the roundtables for the exhibitions that are being developed, and the artist is working with all the spaces of the museum, all the facilities of the museum, and on the board, and discussing the research in the library and using the entire museum structure. And that one, for example, we call it graft, like grafting onto a plant, because it's not just like an artist going in and doing a project, but it's actually about the importance of the voice and the perspective of the artists within the museum institution. And we based ideas on, for example, Artist Placement Group in England, which was placing artists inside of different industries. So I'd be very curious to understand this project that you were.
This is meant to be for local artists, actually, that artists that are in the status of independent artists, members of the Artists Association that who are living in those usually small communities with no any how to say, there is no actually any kind of I don't have word job job offer, you know, to be employed. So it is not that kind of project like some artist residency. It's for a local artists to make some kind of, yeah.
Maybe I can add a little bit, although I was part of the group in the beginning, but then I couldn't do it. The idea was also to implement artists in local communities to work on different types, developing artistic projects with the local community, but also, for example, helping in libraries or medical facilities. So going outside of art field, let's say, but still developing kind of work that could benefit artists, but also those targeted groups. And the problem with that was that the local offices, as everything in Serbia and the art support, they were not interested in supporting local artists, as they usually not interested in supporting social security for local artists, so they didn't want to participate in this kind of model that could benefit in a longer term community, but also find a way of subsidizing artistic work. So it's, for now, it's just a model that we need to see how it can be done, or if it can at all.
We have to convince them better.
We hear about the problems that artists have, but I know hundreds of artists in Serbia and elsewhere, and they're a very heterogeneous group. Some of them live very well. And I know that because they live well off of me and other collectors. I think that artistic associations should strive for greater solidarity within their own ranks. If association has a societal goal, then this goal can be advanced by all the good artists, whether they're prominent or not. But the prominent ones are noticed. I think I also belong to some scientific societies which are more homogeneous, in which scientists of different reputations and degrees of success actually work together. Professional societies have greater degree of solidarity and people identify with them. So try to improve the camaraderie and solidarity within the association, and to involve those colleagues who are good artists, like those who are equally good, maybe even better, who don't do well. Build solidarity.
And how would you see that more concrete? Like the painter pays the bill for the performance artist, for instance, or?
Sorry, I did not.
I said, how would it look like more concrete? Would the painter pay the bill for the performance artist, or can you explain more how you see the solidarity?
Well, in the artistic societies that I know, people do various things. Actually, I was 2 days ago in the apartment of a well-to-do artist who does videos and performance and drawings, and she lives in the poshest neighborhood in Belgrade. She's within a stone's throw of American Embassy with all the antennas and all the spying that goes on there. So That is the problem. Why? Well, she now happens to be in Sarajevo, well, but why don't we have here artists who can tell their colleagues how to make it in the world? And again, they're good artists. I know many good artists. Those who for example, Kata.
Yeah, I will, but no, please finish. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just raised my hand. No. Oh, no. I mean, I think. I think that one of the things that comes to my mind after all the presentations is also that and you said it earlier, it's this problem of demystifying what art is. Because I think that as long as artists really think that, you know, there has to be some special law or special status or special something, it's going to be a problem. I think the logic of why you, of how you rebel your exploitation is important. And I think that there are two things. If you don't consider yourself to be exploited, you have a serious problem. And I think that a lot of artists don't think they're exploited. Or maybe they do, but they don't want to talk about it because they have all sorts of, there's all sorts related to that. And that demystifying the process of creation, which, and I am sounding as a broken record, I think art should be considered work. And when you start considering it as work, as paid work, then you're on, I think that you're doing a great job in terms of, you know, putting that kind of discussion on the table within a very traditional visual artist. And that I think one of the problems that you mentioned, why these artists are not here, is because they were trained that they are special, that they are exceptional, that the only reason why they succeed in the art world is because they're special. And this is a totally individualizing principle. There's nothing, no solidarity. It's complete competition crossed with the neoliberal ideology of competition, which makes you prosper, then you're screwed. And so artists can't build solidarity because what they are trained, or even if they don't believe that, I don't think that artists are some idiots, please don't misunderstand me, that's not, but the ideology and the system and how it works is that you need to distinguish yourself from others. So if you consider your colleagues as competition, then how you're gonna be in solidarity?
Yeah, and I also think we have to be careful when we talk about making it, because I mean, one of the things that is becoming very evident is that certain kinds of people, certain kinds of artists make it. They belong to certain classes, they belong to certain races, and they belong to certain genders. So I think that what we have to strive for is something that's more inclusive and that also doesn't perceive the model of success as being definitive of whether an artist is a good artist or not. And I think that none of the associations ban what is considered successful economical artists to join. I think it's a choice, because I think that there's, I don't think that there's like anyone says you can't join if you make a certain amount of money. And I also think we have to realize that sometimes artists are successful because they come from classes that can permit them to work only on their artwork. That's it. Sorry.
Yeah, I would just like to make just a short, it's maybe a question also for Katja, maybe, because when you say like, let's not be exceptional, let's not seek for this exceptionality, or how do you, but what is our choice? You know, are we workers, you know, like workers, like meaning worker today means that you have, you're an employee and you have an employer. This is like what is who the labor law is regulating employees, no? Or we are entrepreneurs, like if we don't want to be exceptional, who
how we should understand our position in these labor terms. What do you, I mean, maybe. Oh, or,
Okay, I have one question, and maybe I want to tell something that is maybe connected with this. So I'll first continue. We can, from the position of artists, I think it depends on the context. Like, in what context are you working? Like, for example, if you are in the moment to producing the art for let's say, non-contracted exhibition, like you are producing something for yourself because now you have experience. I don't know, something is like you want to do some painting. So in that context, you are an entrepreneur because you are working with something that you want to sell in the future. It depends. Maybe you will sell for collector or you will sell for some gallery to exhibit. Not for the money. I think you will have some collection of few paintings that are connected, and then you will have exhibition. So that is some kind of the future projection. In that context, you are an entrepreneur. But on the other hand, like even the entrepreneurs are working with the labor law. They are not exceptional in this labor law. So basically, in the working conditions, it's the same. Are you the worker or let's say owner of the factory? The law is the same. Yes, for the like your rights, how many working hours, social insurance, everything is the same. It's not the question do you have more money or less money. In the law, you are the same. But on the other hand, I think you think it's not. How? Sorry, but this is like.
No. Do we have an expert here?
No. I think in the law it's
of labor law, maybe.
But in Slovenia.
In Slovenia, it's the same.
I was cutting you off. So.
No, go.
No. Okay. Of course, that legal position is not the same. Like you are employer and you are employee. It's not the same. But even the like a management status in the factory, they have like the same rights in the labor law. They have the same rights, and of course their position is not the same as you are telling that there are differences, like your social background, your race, your gender, everything is different. But for
can I just say very shortly, because we have like now like employers, let's say as the managers board, or I don't know, like in association of artists, we understood everything, how the employees have all the working rights against the employers, and we like employers are completely unprotected. It's like who are working on voluntary basis, and it's like we can't complain to anyone. So just to make it short.
Of course, there are different contexts. Like it's hard to be a general in these questions. Yeah. But I want to say just in the other context, like if you are already somehow contracted by some gallery or by some organization to do, let's say, exhibition or to do design, I think in that context, you are like a worker, definitely. Like you are not an entrepreneur. So I think it's really important for the artists not to be exceptional in the law, but I think they just need to approach like with a more contract. Let's say they need to insist on this, like a contracts to insist on their like working rights in the mean of the law. Labor law. Like, I don't want to work on Sunday. Don't send me emails on Sunday. I want to have free day. No, I don't want to answer on the email after the 5 hours. No. Yes, but and I have, okay, this is the question for Wahida, because you said that and now you also mentioned that you, and my question is why? Like really, I want to understand why do you work for free? Because, and also, okay, I even, of course, okay, I know, maybe I know what is the answer, maybe other people don't know what is the answer. Why do you work for free? And also, did you ever calculate how more money association need to have like a paid, maybe, I don't know, like a president, vice president, maybe one more, somebody from board or something like that. So did you ever do that calculation? Do you know how much money do you need?
I think you should come to help us. We really need your help.
I also think I know what is the misunderstanding here. What you're trying to say, if I understand you right, is that even if you're an entrepreneur or if you're a worker, you have a clear sense of that your work or whatever you're doing has an economic value. And because at the end you said, why are they working for free? And I think that is key. That is the most important thing, is the artistic labor and economic value are dissociated from the point of view of how an artist gets trained. It is not dissociated from a point of view of a collector or a person who buys art and so on and so on. There's no, everything has a price, and so does art. But for an artist, and the way they get trained is that these two things are separated. And I think I believe that's what you're saying, is that even if you're an entrepreneur and you're doing something for it in order to sell it, you have a very clear sense that this has some kind of an economic value, that even if it's going to be rewarded afterwards, when you sell it, you are going to think about the process. And and as a worker, it's in a different situation because you may be employed. Again, your process is already economically valued. I mean, yeah. Okay, so I was just, in that sense, the artist is different from everyone else. Is that what you were saying? I mean, I'm just trying to understand, because we were all confused by the fact that you said that everyone
is really,
the same.
Okay, maybe I'm not so clear because of the English, but I want to say that I think that artists are not exceptional. I think that they are really in some base level same as workers, and even in the position, if they want to be seen as entrepreneur, basically, they have like the same law that is regulating working conditions. Also same needs, okay. Also same needs, yes, of course.
Maybe just to clarify a bit, according to Serbian labor law, visual artists are invisible. They don't exist according to labor law. So you cannot say that they are, equal or the same as entrepreneur. And this is the different. So you cannot say that artists are they have the same position as workers, because the workers are not the same according to labor law. Some are not recognized, some are not invisible, some are treated as employees, some are have other type of contracts that are not regulated at all. So there are varieties, different types of working regulations that are very problematic according to, at the moment, labor law. But I just wanted yeah, so this is a really complex question when we are talking about, so you have artists that have some type of contracts. You have artists that have the status of independent artists. Some are working on the black market, so they don't have any contract and they're not visible in any type of social security. And another comment on the question whether they are paid or not, or why are they working for free. I think that this is political work, the same type of work that workers are investing when the question of unionizing is in the question. So I assume that many of artists involved in present association have some type of contract or are paid for their work. But this is something that is another layer of political work that is not choose to be paid or not paid, or this is, choose to be voluntary or not. This is the context in which we are working all, and we are aware, or maybe we should be aware, that some type of political work at the moment could not be paid, but it should be paid, and there is awareness that it should be paid, but we are not working in ideal circumstances.
Yeah, like all interesting work actually is less paid,
Okay, sorry, I come from another bubble. So I come from the trade union bubble. I will elaborate what do I mean by that. I think that, if you compare the art worker and migrant worker, they are the same in the exploitation. That's it. And I'm trying to be here provocative, because if you see, for example, a Turkish migrant worker who doesn't get paid for his work, what's the difference with an art worker who doesn't get paid for his work? So you need to learn the worker's language. You need to have a stance as a worker. And what do I mean by that? For example, are you willing to enter the economic relationship as an art worker with the investor/employer who exploits worker? Are you willing to do that just for the money? This is the question. For example, if there is a big investor, public investor, who builds roads, and this public investor, for example, has to give 1% of the money for the artwork, are you willing to get that dirty money from this very same investor as an art worker? Is this art, or is this art washing? So this is the problem. And this is not the problem for the art worker, this is a problem for the worker. Because a migrant worker, for example, also asks himself that question. Do I get to enter this economic relationship with this employer who cheats workers? Lots of workers come to us, we have a counseling office for workers, with the very same question. And they say, I have to do that. And we say to them, no, we don't have to do that. Oh, I have a family. Well, sorry, lots of workers have families. That doesn't mean that you have to be exploited for that. You have to have a stance as a worker. And this is the worker's language. So we are talking about how to get the worker's language in the art field. Then this is a process. So we're not getting there in a legal status. We are way back there. So if we are basically, when I'm hearing this debate, it's a debate like, we are taking 3 steps ahead of the basic needs, basic language. So I think that this is a big and long and necessary process. And to take these things a bit shorter, I think that we have to collaborate and come out of these bubbles. Trade unions have their own bubble. Artwork or the art field also has its own bubble. They don't collaborate. So the workers' language is stuck between there. It's somewhere in the middle. So, for example, why don't everybody doesn't do this collaboration? I don't know, this is one of the questions, of course. How do you do that collaboration? But I think, for example, today there was a press conference of the trade union in Borbe. And for example, it's a big thing. So one of the actions, for example, why doesn't the art field doesn't do the battle also for the workers which are working, for example, in the Borbe? So why don't you, for example, do this, for example, support of any kind for this type of work? So this is the way of collaboration. daily collaboration. And this is the way that you learn the workers' language. And they learn also your language. And you have the same language. And this is the process what I'm talking about. We are all living in our own bubbles. We have to collaborate between them. This is the main thing.
Exceptionality of artistic work. I think the problem is that in capitalist economy, like imagining work that's not conditioned by market makes this work exceptional. Makes us think that this work is exceptional. But we do have a right to think and conceive and imagine a work which is not conditioned by market conditions, by market laws. And for me, claiming that my cultural work is exceptional is the same as I would claim that a doctor that heals me, that his work is exceptional and should be an exception from the market-driven economy because it's public good. And that's why we always insist on this culture as public good mantra, because I don't fight for privately funded, market-regulated art field. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in negotiating between private art buyers, collectors, and making artists more successful on the market. If I would argue for that, I wouldn't have like any, it wouldn't be an option to ask for any kind of subsidy from the state. But I really feel deeply that this system of market laws for the art field just produce inequality, like 1% of artists and the gray matter of art working class, and then also art which is accessible only to the elites. And I fight for something else. And if you call this work then exceptional, okay, call it whatever, but it's just as exceptional as the work of a teacher, who should be publicly subsidized, or doctor, or many other public servants.
I also think that exceptional, and the word also is closely related to the process that artists need to position themselves in the field, and that's not something you do once when you're out of art school. You think, okay, what's my position going to be? That's constant work, and I think therefore also related to the question of free work. That process takes time to reinvent, to reposition, to take a direction, wrong direction, other direction, and I think that therefore public money is an excellent tool. And in Belgium, you can apply for grants to deep into your career, and I think that logic really is necessary for artists, and that's also exceptional, that you constantly need to reinvent yourself or reposition yourself at least. So yeah, that was what I wanted to add.
Yeah, but how to say, like I just very short, you know, like the work artists do is usually not something that anybody wants, you know, like it's all very often against you know, like something that is needed, expected, or I don't know, like, or it's okay. We are living in this relations of you know, like neoliberal capitalism. Everything is all the work, like dominant productive relations are for a profit, you know, like so it's like of course that it's and artist work is not meant to generate a profit, I think, you know, like, so it's not the work that is what I mean, okay, of course there is like we are not talking, you can talk about arts and arts, you know, like but in I think in our understanding here, we don't think that art should, you know, like, so this is not interesting work for the dominant production relations, you know. It's like the same as you explain about housework, or I don't know, it's, you know.
Did you want to say? I mean, when I talk about exceptionality, I mean something very specific. And when I say that artistic work is considered exceptional, it is because it is essentialized. So as an art worker or as an artist, your work is very often considered as something that is stemming from your inner need to express yourself and so on and so on. And so this is where I, in my work, draw a comparison with domestic work, with what women do, with women's housework, because it is essentialized in a similar fashion, right? Women are inclined to do housework way better than men, which is the essence of how they get oppressed and how they are exploited and why their work is not visible as a type of work which should be paid. And this is a similar principle that works in the art, because artist is considered that whatever they do, even if they don't think of themselves that they are not doing the work, as something that stems from their, you know, do what you love what you do. It's the need for expression. It's how it is created. I mean, you get accepted to an art school because of your talent, right? And where does the talent come from? From your essence. And so that is the gist of where the oppression of an artistic labor stems, in my opinion. And I have nothing against individual artists, they're whatever you want to call them, what they do. But the problem is that this essentializing of artistic labor in this way is also the vehicle which creates the room for exploitation. Because in that sense, your work is not considered work, but it's something that you have to do. It's your need. Like as a woman, it's my need apparently to clean the house or to their children and to raise them, because it is my biology. I mean, it's bullshit. It's socially constructed in a similar way that artistic labor is socially constructed as such. And I'm not sure, and so, but the problem is that with women, this oppression is uniform in a way, right? All the women are more, it's not individualized. So whatever is essentialized serves as also as something that all women are somehow submitted to one way or the other. It depends on the class and so on. But for artists, this essentialization is something that makes them different, right? The more there are different kinds of talents and different kinds of artists. So essentialization is in fact positive, because it distinguishes you, but it is at the same time also, the paradox is that it also makes you exploited, because you can't see your work, you can't see what you're doing as your work. And so that's what you were saying about the language. I think that all these things, it's not really, I'm not interested in philosophical discussions, really not. My question and my interest in this question is because what are the strategies? What are the discursive, what is the discursive legitimation for an artwork and for an artist to do their work? It is very important with what kind of language and what kind of tools we define what we do. No, it doesn't matter. I'm like, it's great that we all have art as a public good, but as long as this art as a public good is not considered that it has to be paid, I don't care about the public good. I mean, it's great that the public enjoys my art, but can the public also pay the art then? And also, so I think that that's the question, that the economic side of what artists do is divorced, and not only it is divorced, it's antagonized. If you get paid, there's a problem, right? Because if you're only when you get really very further down the line and you're a very successful artist, then your painting or something can be sold for a lot of money. Before that, you need to work for free in order to make it there. So, I mean, I think it's a problem when we put the economic side of somebody who needs to live in this capitalist society where most of the people have to work in order to live. that you define yourself as that what you do is not work, that you're doing it for love, for self-expression, for whatever. I don't care for what you do, but be paid. Do it for love, but be paid for it as well. I don't think that, these two things have to be divorced.
Like my point was that like the way the exploitation happens is different. You know, like talking when Goran was saying about we have to learn the workers' language, you know, because the way that exploitation happens, you know, it's.
I think, I think that the exploitation is the paradox of art, because you don't see yourself as exploited. Why you don't see yourself as exploited? I mean, please, I hope I'm wrong. It's because you don't see that this is work. Because the art, I mean, my experience so far has been that many artists refuse to be seen as workers. They don't want to be identified as workers. They are not trained to be considered themselves as workers. Go to an art school curriculum. I mean, many of you have been there. Were you treated as workers? No way. You were that's not the language in which this operates, because the Western art is defined by the erasure of the idea of work. And I think that that's why there is a problem, because this is this exceptionality or talent or love or self-expression is paralyzing, while at the same time it serves as something really nice, right? And I think that that's the problem. And that's why the workers' language is a strategic tool. It's not to degrade artists or anything like that, but it is a strategic tool of how you rebel your oppression. Is if you define your work, you are able to say, no, enough is enough.
Wonder how in opposite it could work, like how emancipatory the experience of artists could be for the workers. Is that because there has to be like a both way, you know? It's
let me make a counterpoint to this eloquent statement that you have to be an employee and you have to be a worker. It's an anecdote from a good American university where the assistant to the president of the university is commenting about some controversy as to whether members of the faculty should wear tattoos and where should this tattoo be visible, or what if it is partly visible, if it is under the shirt or on the bare arm. And she was a professor also, but on detail with the president's office. She is an assistant to the president, and we are sitting there and she's talking. She's one of us, but she's also on the other side temporarily. And she says the word employee, referring to the faculty. Employees have or to do this or must not do that. And I raise a hand and said, excuse me, I do not consider myself an employee. I think we are the university. And she apologizes. And she says, of course not. Professors are not employees. They are the university. Why are you asking us to lessen ourselves, or lessen art, not me, but why should the artists lessen themselves in their estimation? I can tell you there are other creative professions, very creative professions other than art, in which practitioners work very hard precisely because they do not consider themselves employees. And I know many people, including myself, who work, I could have worked 1/2 less and be paid 1/2 more and really be an employee with a boss whom I have to please. Our artwork is creative work. There are many other, science is a big field of very creative work, very imaginative, very creative work, in which people would, I think, take the opposite view.
okay. the camera says the batteries are out, so we have to finish. And thank you, everybody. And let's stay in touch and everything, so we could continue these conversations in a more informal way outside. If the heat went down.
Se gostima na Zoom. Ali se gostima na Zoom. Ništa. Kako na Zoom? Evo ljudi sve na Zoom. Ali? Nikome ne. Reci ljudima doviđenja, hvala vam.
Završili smo za večeras. Završili smo za večeras. Čujemo se na tvoj kanal.
Ne mogu da im kažem.